Welcome to the August meeting of the Nevada County Camera Club, and welcome to those present. We have a good crowd tonight here at the church, and to those at home. We're glad you could join us. My name is Rachel Rosenthal. I'm president of the club this year. So I'm going to start with some announcements. Then I will turn the program over to our Vice President, Kathy Triolo, who will introduce our speaker for this evening. Then we'll take a quick intermission and with some snacks in the back, and then come back for the second half of the meeting for critique. So a couple of announcements is we do offer our club meetings the last few months in two modalities. We have the in-person here, and then we have the folks on Zoom. And I've sent an email out to club members, just giving them a heads up. Tonight's presentation is called the advanced modality, advanced, because our presenter has several things that she'd like to show in person, and to show them to the folks at home, we're counting on our crack AV crew here, and we hope everything goes smoothly. But if for any reason it does not, we are recording you. You'll be able to watch the entire presentation on our club's webpage. So it is being recorded, should those at home have any viewing difficulties. All right. Also, a request from the church, who so graciously lets us meet here, is they may be having meetings in the hallway outside. So they did ask us to please keep the double doors closed. So if you see them open, please close them. And if you are going to have a conversation in the hallway, if you would just step outside, just to not disturb their meetings that may be in progress. All right. And also last month, if you were here, it got a little warm. So they've agreed, they've kept the air conditioner on for a whole meeting tonight, so hopefully it will be much more comfortable. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to our membership chair, Barbara Summers, who's in the back, and she's going to come up and welcome our new members and guests. So come on up.
Okay, we have arrived. Okay, there we go. Welcome. Glad to see everybody here. For people who are on Zoom, we miss your body. Come on back. We're all here waiting to see you again. Okay, so I want to remind you, if you came in and you got by me back there and didn't sign in, if you would please do so on break. Let's see. And you already reminded them to keep the door closed in the back. We have, I think it is 5 guests this evening. We have 2 new members. Meg Christensen. Meg, are you here? No, how about Terry McWilliams? No, okay, so already, we haven't even started. We have applications for 2 new members already. So Francine? There she is. You know what? You're going to be a member as soon as I get home and stick you in the computer. You want to give us a 1 minute what you enjoy about photography, what it is that you do?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
It's my opportunity to see the world through a different light. I'm black and white primarily, and I love shapes and colors and light and dark and shadow, and that's it.
Well, that'll be a wonderful addition.
Good.
Terrific, terrific. Dana's renewing. She's like I think you were here when it first started, huh, Dana? Dana Rubin? Sorry, Eva. I'm sorry. Anyway, everybody know Eva? Welcome back, Eva.
Longest members of the club.
Yeah, long time. Okay, that's about all I have. Have a good evening.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. Just a note on the Nevada County Fair. Our club had quite a good showing, and so congratulations to all those who entered, especially if it's your first time, and if you won a ribbon, congratulations to you. All right, so an announcement that we're going to do a vote tonight, And I announced at last month's meeting is that the board has proposed a change to the club's bylaws. Currently, when you renew annual membership, dues are due, currently the bylaws say the third meeting of the calendar year, which would be March. The board has proposed to move that deadline from March, wow, sound effects, from March back to February. And the goal of that is to decrease the amount of work it takes to track membership for the several board members who do track membership. It takes quite a lot of effort for folks. There seems to be the long deadline, we think, gives folks a little extra time, and so they don't turn it in even in March, and then they have to be reminded, and they're ultimately reinstated. And so we're hoping to keep it front and center on folks' radar, that dues are really due at the end of each calendar year. The deadline is the second meeting or February of each year. And so to reduce the workload of those monitoring, tracking membership. And so to change any of our bylaws requires a 2/3 vote of approval by those in attendance. So I'm looking for a vote, and we're going to be counting, estimated, and I need some help, of those here present in the church, and then having Peter, I guess, watch the Zoom and have, however you'd like to do it, have them raise their hands, or both the little hand. Okay, all right. So what I'm going to do is the board is proposing to move the annual membership fee deadline from the third general meeting of the month to the second general meeting of the month. So I ask for all those in favor to please raise your hand. Okay. And we're doing a count. Please hold them up for just a moment. I hope Kathy's doing a better job. Okay, Kathy's counting, and then Peter's counting online, so.
Okay, I think I got it.
Okay.
42.
Kathy's got 42. Peter's still counting, and he has 11. So is that 2/3 of all present? I would say that passed by a good margin of 2/3. So I'm going to assume that that has passed, and so that will take effect for our 2023 dues. So you'll hear more about that at the end of the year. So thank you, everybody. Yeah, and our treasurer is clapping in the back. It will make his life easier. So yes, so thank you, everybody. All right, so just also FYI, as we look towards the fall in 2023, we have several positions on the board that will become open. Some are due to term limits, like Kathy and I are both terming out. And so we're looking for some new folks to help fill those positions. And we have several, some on the elected, president, VP, treasurer, audio visual. We're gonna need some leadership in that. Exhibitions, refreshments. There are several. So if you have an interest in serving and volunteering, and I know there's a lot of talent in this room and at home, so please shoot me an email. We would love to talk to you, okay? Let's see, what else? With that, I will turn it over to Kathy, who wants to talk about next month's presentations. Okay, come on up.
And thank you, Rachel. All right. Hey, everybody. It's so good to see so many of you here this time. Yay. And it's cool. 2 good things. 3 good things. We're all healthy, right? Okay. Yeah, I got some thumbs up. Okay, good. Just wanted to tell you about next month. Next month is our special month. If you've been a member for 2 to 3 years, you will know that September is series month. And I will get all the details to you via email tomorrow so that we don't have to go through it now. Just want you to know that in the past, we've done 12 images in a series. We're cutting it back a little. We're cutting it to 8. And then you could also have a title card. So that would be 9. And we are not going to have a speaker. The whole evening is devoted to our members and your talent. So be sure. So you want to know how to enter them? You don't do it on the website. What you will do is send it to me, I think. Or, well, actually, it'll be, you bring the flash drive to, George, you won't be here next month. It'll be Douglas. Yeah, so Douglas will be collecting your flash drives. Again, all the details will be in the email I send out tomorrow, so wait for all that good news. There are also, so there won't be a speaker, but there will still be your images that you will submit for voting, not for critique. There will be no critique next month. So, but we get to vote on your images, we get to see them, so please do participate. I think that's that, right? Do you want me to go ahead or you got more? Do you have a, okay. I'll come
Don't
back.
go far, though. Don't go far. A couple of other announcements is Mark Rideout. I don't know if you're here or at home. He asked me to please remind folks that John Hernandez, who spoke here at the club a few months ago, is offering a San Francisco street photography workshop at Viewpoint, and Mark is the coordinator or facilitator for that workshop. So it's on September 17th. Check the Viewpoint website if you're interested. Also, David Wong asked to make a couple of announcements.
So I have. Hello. Just back there, I have an announcement of our Scotland workshop for next April, the 21st of April to the beginning of May. So if you'd like to attend, it's going to be a lot of fun. We had Bill Wages and I and a few other people. We did a preview trip, and there's a lot of places to go to and whatnot. So that'll be about 10 people in the group. If you'd like to join us, you can stick your name on there or give me a buzz. And the other thing I have is this Saturday, I'm having a studio garage sale of prints and all this stuff that, I've accumulated over years. And so if you want some cheap prints and cards and different things, come by, and the address is on the sheet back there. That's it.
Okay. Any other announcements? Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Kathy to introduce our speaker.
Thank you. Before I introduce Hannah, I just want to make sure that everybody got my email and that you are able to access Hannah's wonderfully detailed printout. I mean, even if you miss her presentation, I think you could follow her handout and you would be able to frame your photos. It's just that wonderful. So I thank Hannah for that. I do have a few copies that are in print, and I'm happy to share. I think I might have 5 or 6 more, so please let me know if you would like a copy before Hannah starts, okay? So let's talk about Hannah a little bit. We are so happy to have her here. She is so wonderfully informed and just on the things that we want to hear about, thank goodness. Hannah is a Nevada City resident, so we're lucky she's around. She currently works at the Center for the Arts. She's a program assistant. Originally from the Bay Area, like so many of us, and then Central Arkansas, like probably none of us. Are any of you from Arkansas? Well, Hannah, okay, so our special resident. Hannah received her BA in art history from the University of Central Arkansas. She's a lifelong artist of many applications: painting, drawing, sewing, metalsmithing, so talk to her about that, bead weaving, and film photography, to name a few. She's like a Renaissance woman here. Her knowledge of and interest in fine art framing began in school with her own art and continued when she began framing professionally in Nevada County. And I originally met her at the Nevada City Frame Shop when we had our gallery shows there. She was certainly helpful there. So Hannah is going to talk about framing tonight. And that's something I think every one of us is interested in. And on that note, Hannah, I'm going to let you take over. I just want you to know she's doing a demo up here. We have our technical team, thank you so much, I love you all, is going to project her tabletop up to the screen. Is that correct?
The demo starts later right now.
Okay, we're going to do the PowerPoint first, and then we're going to do her demo. Is that correct? All right, so the show must begin. Raise your hands if you need a copy of her printout. I'll come around.
No, I think it's, you guys can see
Testing, oh. Okay. Well, everyone settled, maybe? Well, thank you for the introduction, Kathy, and thanks everyone for having me here today. Like she said, I've been a lifelong artist and I started framing my own art in high school. I was really lucky to have teachers that taught it to me and taught me how valuable it is. And I know that if you're a self-taught artist, like many photographers are, this is kind of something that no one taught you or something that you haven't picked up yet. And it really is very valuable skill to have. And I just want to show you guys a very practical way to frame today. We're not going to get too complicated. So we're basically going to cover kind of a bare necessities style of framing that's going to make your photos look really good without eating into your profits if you're trying to sell or costing you too much money. Because it would be nice to make some money off of taking photographs, wouldn't it? So even if you have absolutely zero knowledge, I think that each and every one of you should be able to walk away today with enough knowledge to begin learning how to frame your own art. So either for sale or for display in a gallery or even to give to someone. You can go to the next slide. So what are the goals of framing art? I wanted to start off with this question because I think people make it very complicated, a lot more complicated than it needs to be. And sometimes the final product can end up looking really distracting, or it costs more than it should have, or it took way more time than it needed to. So I've basically broken it down into 3 goals. But before I get into the goals, I just want to give a disclaimer that I'm not going to talk about printing your photos today. However, it's really, really important to have high quality prints that you are framing. You know, they say you can't polish a turd. So same goes with framing really low quality prints. It's just not going to look good. It's not really worth your time. Yeah, but if you don't already know how to get good replications of your work, then you should definitely take the time to learn how to do that or learn where you can get it done for you. So our 3 goals, number 1, to display and enhance the art. So what do I mean by that? We'll start with display. So if you're a photographer, you could very well just tack your photo up on the wall, technically, but that comes with its own set of problems besides just not looking professional or polished whatsoever. So you need to display your work in some way, and I think it's actually an opportunity for an artist to further communicate your artistic vision with the style of framing that you choose. And then in the same vein, to enhance the art, essentially, when you frame a piece, everything should just lead your eye into the focal point of your photo, and the frame really should just melt into the background. It's there to enhance, it's not there to distract you from the work that you're framing. So yeah, this goal can really be interpreted in a lot of ways, but for the purposes of this presentation today, I'm going over a basic and muted style of framing that I believe is going to appeal to a wider audience and is going to make people want to buy your work, and they can envision it in their home, basically. So 2, to preserve the art over time, UV rays are present in any room that has light in them. So it doesn't have to be direct light that is hitting the work of art to have it damaged by UV rays. And the UV rays are going to fade the image over time, and we don't really want that. We want to preserve the photo. So there are ways to do that with higher quality glass. And then as well, just using products that are acid free. And we'll go over that a little bit more later. And number 3, to generate value for the collector and profit for the artist. So if you are offering like amazing photography that is also well framed, whoever's collecting your art or buying your art is going to see the value in that over time. They're going to have this print on their wall and it's going to look good year after year after year. And that's going to make them want to maybe purchase more from you because they can see the value in it. And then as well, you want to make as much profit from each piece that you sell. So we don't want to spend a lot of money on extraneous things that you don't need. You just want exactly what you need and leave behind what you don't. Okay, so next slide. So we're just going to go over the tools real quick. And I want to say that I know not everyone in this room is going to be comfortable using all of the tools that I'm pointing out, and that's fine. There's going to be workarounds for you to find something that is comfortable for you. Definitely don't try to do anything that freaks you out, power tools. So first is just pencil and paper. You want to be able to write down numbers. The numbers are very important. Measuring tape and ruler. So I actually recommend using one of these guys that has all the way to the 16th of an inch on there. It's going to be helpful to get an accurate measurement. Gloves can be any type of glove. You just want to make sure that it doesn't leave a mark on the glass when you touch it, because that's what you need the gloves for, is handling glass. I use these, honestly. You don't really need much more. You're not going to be like scraping the glass against your hand or anything like that. Alcohol, so denatured alcohol is best. That's kind of not sellable in this state anymore, I believe. So just as high of a percentage of isopropyl alcohol that you can get would be good. Microfiber cloth. So this is a specific microfiber cloth, the kind that you clean your eyeglasses with. So I know there's kind of like the kitchen microfiber cloths that you can see the texture, not those. This is really what you need to clean glazing that goes in frames. And then a soft brush. I have a cool like anti-static brush here. This is used for camera equipment and projectors and other stuff like that. It's this little guy here. This is really helpful for removing little particles off of glass, which are our enemy basically for this presentation. Cutting mat, so one of these guys. These are very valuable to have for just about anything. I would highly recommend picking one up. And box cutter, one of these guys. I think this is the best thing for cutting all the paper materials. Flathead screwdriver and all. You guys know what that is, this kind of thing. Wire cutters, and then, oh yeah, my drill's over here. Ugh. Want a little drill. And then the staple gun and the point gun. So this is my staple gun. You can use something like this, or one that's attached to like an air compressor, works well as well. And then this is a point gun. So this is actually for framing. And if you get frames, you'll often see in the backside there's little tabs. And this is how those go in. So we'll talk more about this tool later. So you can go to the next slide. And then our materials. So let's see here. The materials I have listed here, this is really specific to what I'm teaching you today. There are a lot of different materials out there, but I'm kind of condensing it for this presentation. So the pre-cut mat board or spacers, that's going to be what's keeping your image from touching the glass. You don't want the photo to be directly on the glass ever. Foam core, that's your backing. The molding is the technical word for the frame. I'll just go back and forth probably using those words. Pre-cut glass. Cutting glass is tricky and you can just break a whole piece. I highly recommend not doing that. Go to Ben Franklin and buy pre-cut glass. Acid-free hinging tape. We'll talk about hinging later. Acid-free double-sided tape, gotta have that. Staples and whatever else goes in your tool. D-rings are the hanging things from the back, these little guys. And then wire, packing paper, one of these rolls, or any kind of paper that's in a roll. And then bumpers. Bumpers just go on the back of the frame. So we can go to the next slide now. So how do we know what materials to use? Before you start framing, it's going to be helpful to imagine where this piece is going to live, what kind of life it's going to live, how it's going to get there. These are all important considerations, like if this piece is outside or if it's being shipped somewhere, you might want to consider plexiglass because shipping and having glass outside can often lead to broken glass. And then also you might need a higher UV rating. And like I said, the goals of our presentation today to display, enhance, protect, add value, and generate profits. And there are instances where your goals could differ from this. For example, if you have a gallery show and you need to frame like 30 pieces all at once, and you don't have enough money to afford acid-free mats, then maybe you might consider getting regular mats because you need them and there's that time frame, and that's how it is sometimes. So next slide, kind of go over the cost benefit analysis of when you're framing. So are you framing this to sell? Are you giving it to a friend? Is it going to hang in a museum or a gallery? That's going to determine how much money you're spending on this, basically. Archival versus economical. So that's going to be acid-free materials or archival. So all paper products contain acid in them naturally. So if you have just a regular piece of paper or a regular mat that's touching your photo, that acid is going to leach into your photo and it's going to turn it yellow and brittle over time, and it's going to end up looking burnt, actually. So that's why we want to avoid those if we can. But if it's short term, maybe economical could be helpful for you. Custom versus ready-made. So custom framing, I don't know if any of you have had that done before. It can get very pricey very quickly, hundreds of dollars. The ready-made frames are the ones where you go in the store and you just see they're selling an 8x10 and they're selling a 5x6, and it has the backing, it has the glass, it has the mats in there. If you can find a frame that works for you that's ready-made, that's going to be a big saver of your money right there. And there's some things you want to avoid, like you definitely want to look at the corners are going to be the most important part. So if the corners have gaps or if they look shoddy, I would avoid that frame. I would also avoid buying MDF frames and like the kind of plastic frames. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but they do make frames out of plastic. It's not easy to work with those materials, so that's why I wouldn't recommend it. So the pros and cons of buying pre-cut and custom cut material versus cutting your own. I mean, when you are cutting your own materials, cutting your own mats or glass, for example, that is, first of all, a lot of money for the equipment, for a mat cutter, for a glass cutter, for the space that it takes up. You're going to need a lot of space. It takes up a lot of time. And if you mess up, you're eating that cost. So the upside to it is that you're going to be saving a little bit of money. So if you feel like you want to invest all of that into cutting your own materials, do that, but I wouldn't really recommend it because we have Ben Franklin, and you can go there and you can have them custom cut a mat for you, and it's actually pretty affordable. And also, Kathy pointed out to me, there's websites you can buy custom cut mats online from, and you could save money that way, but you just need to get your measurements and everything down. It might cost a little more though. So quality and scale when planning your price point. So if you are planning on selling your framed work, you got to think about your audience that you're selling to. So how much money are they likely to spend on something? If it's a low price point, if you don't think your audience is going to want to spend more than $50, do not frame your piece in a 24 by 34 frame, because that's going to cost a lot of money, all those materials, all the glass, and you're just going to have this big piece that no one's buying because it's out of their price point, basically. So my advice is to start small and then work your way up if you're selling your work. So next slide, please. And then sourcing your materials. So before you go to the store to get your materials, you need to take your measurements. And maybe they'll remeasure in the store, but still, for you to have a good base idea of where you're starting off at, you need to measure multiple times. Like they say, measure twice, cut once. So bring your art to the store also. Any materials actually that you have. So if you already have a frame, if you already have a mat, bring that with you as well. And the store associate is going to provide you with samples. Use those samples, hold them up against your photo and see what looks best next to your photo. This is really the best way to guarantee that your framed work is going to look good in the end. Oh, ask for a second opinion. So you can bring a friend, or like I said, ask a store associate, but you could also bring a friend with you that you trust, because sometimes you'll get stuck. You're looking at like 3 different whites and they all start to look the same. And you just need that person to come in and say, okay, I like that one, and then you can move on about your day. Less is more. So I really like to use this little phrase with framing. I think that neutral mats and neutral moldings are going to be more generally well received by a wider range of people. They can pretty much like imagine it in their home maybe. So when I say neutral mats, that's like white, black, gray, creams. For moldings, it's going to be white, black, wood tones, nothing too ornate. And then if you find a style that works for you, stay consistent. Because you never know if one day you'll have a gallery show and then you go to put all of your photos up on the wall. If they all have similar styles of frames and mats, that's going to look so good. If you put them all up there and one's blue, one's pink, one's purple, it's not really going to be a great thing to have on a gallery wall. Buy secondhand. So I'm sure most of you know this, but every single thrift store, consignment store has a pile of frames in the back. These frames are usually good condition, and usually they're made of wood too. And so once you've done this presentation, those frames are going to be a lot more accessible for you guys to use, and it's going to save you so much money. So Ben Franklin. I used to work at Ben Franklin. They are an amazing store, an amazing resource for artists, because they actually have really affordable prices with their materials. So like I already said, ready-made frames, they have a huge selection in there. Definitely watch out for the low quality ones because they are in there. But there are a lot of good ones too. Build your own frames. So I don't know if you guys know what these are, but essentially there are metal frames. They call them build your own, made by Nielsen. They sell them in Ben Franklin. And you can buy 2 legs of your frame. So you would buy this side as one size. So say you had an odd size photo that you wanted to frame, it was 30 by 10, then you can buy legs that are 30 inches and you can buy legs that are 10 inches and you can make your own frame in your own size. So that is a really good workaround if you absolutely say like you have a panoramic shot or something. You're not really going to find any ready-made frames in that size. And I have in the handout, I have a list of some common ready-made frame sizes. So like I already went over, they have the pre-cut and custom cut mat board and spacers there. So you can take your stuff in, you can have them double check your measurements too, and they will cut that for you while you wait. So there's no wait time on that, which is another amazing thing. Same thing with the glass. They have a huge selection. You can go all the way from regular glass to museum glass, which is 99% UV protection. Most of the times you're not going to need that. I usually use UltraView. That's 70% UV protection and it has glare control. That's my recommendation for something that's kind of like middle of the ground price. Foam core, you can get a whole sheet or you can get custom cut. And then your hanging materials, which you put on the back. So next slide, please. So important considerations, getting the measurement right. So this is a hot tip for you guys. As hard as we may try, no one ever gets the 90-degree angle perfect, like in the frame or in the materials that you're cutting. So there's gonna be a slight variation there. So when you go to measure your frame, you measure it exact. You might not be able to actually fit anything in there because of the slight skew of the corners. So what you really want to do is you want to take as exact of a measurement as you can, and then you're going to subtract 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch from that measurement. And that's going to give you the perfect fit in there. So there's wiggle room in every frame. It's made for that. I would just, use your best judgment to figure out how much you want to shave off of that measurement. But that is very important because if you take a measurement and then you go to Ben Franklin, get it cut, you bring it back and it doesn't fit, that's gonna suck. The mat window opening size and the bevel. So mats are cut at a 45-degree angle on the inside, the window opening. This can go either to where you see the 45-degree angle, that's regular bevel. If they cut it the opposite way, that's a reverse bevel. So the 45-degree angle is on the opposite side. The reason you might consider this is if maybe your photo is mostly black, and then if you put a black mat on there and then you just have this one white line around it from the bevel, that might be distracting. So in that case, you would reverse the bevel. They have colored bevels. You can get pink, orange, green. There's some instances that you might want to use that. They also have black core, so that would be a black bevel. I think most of the time you're good with just sticking with regular bevel. And also when you get your stuff printed, you want to keep in mind that 1/8 of an inch is going to be covered all the way around. So all the photos need to have some type of border. If there's not a border, then there's going to be a portion of your photo that's getting covered if you're putting it behind a mat. So take that into consideration when you get stuff printed, and you want to take that into consideration with your opening size. Signatures. So, to each their own with signature placement, but you should decide where you want to sign. And once you do decide, stick to that, keep it consistent. You can sign on the back, you can sign down in the margin, you can sign on the photo itself, controversial maybe. But whatever you decide, keep it consistent, and don't make it too big. Because what happens is if you sign in the margin and you have like a long loop for your Y maybe, well then we would have to cut off your signature in order to keep the window opening size at a respectable ratio, basically. And it doesn't look good to cut a signature off. So keep your signature smaller, decide where you want it to go. And then also the mat border width, another hot tip. Generally, you want your mat width, which is this part here I'm talking about. That needs to be either smaller or bigger than the width of your frame, if that makes sense to you guys. It should not be the same size. That's a framing no-no. It just does not look good. And then standard sizes, I think we covered that for the most part. Let's see if I had any other. Oh, well, I'll just give you an example. So if you have an image that is 16 by 20, and you have a molding that is 1 inch wide, then you're probably going to want something that is a mat that's 2 inches wide, and that'll put you in a 20 by 24 frame. Those are all standard sizes. So if you print with standard sizes, you can frame with standard sizes, and you're going to save money. So there's a lot of options that you have aesthetically. There are even websites you can go on where you will print your stuff off on metal, on canvas. We're not going to go over that today. Only things I'm going to talk about are framing with a mat and framing with spacers. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so I just wanted to give you guys a little visual of how a frame is put together. Starting at the top, I just want to comment on the term rabbet. So what is the rabbet? The rabbet is the ledge here on your frame, and that's what holds everything in. So you will hear me refer to that, and now you know what it is. So your frame, your glass, your mat, or your spacers, then your art, then your backing board, dust cover, and then you got your hanging stuff on the back. We can go to the next one. Okay, so I'm going to get into the actual demonstrations of the framing here in a second. Real quick, you can go to the next slide. I just want to talk about material and which side is the right side, because I'm going to start getting into it and talking about the right side and the wrong side. So when I say right side, I just mean the side of the material that faces the viewer. The back side is the back side of the frame. But also with some materials, there will be a right side and a wrong side. There's a few higher quality glasses that one side has to face out. And if you ever run across that, you can do a little scratch test. So if you scratch it and it leaves a scratch, that's the side that's gonna face the artwork. Okay, so now we'll switch over to our demo. Here it comes. Put this here. A little drink of water. I'll just talk to you about what I'm framing today. So there's one frame that is gonna be wood. It's funny because I told you guys not to buy plastic frames, but this one's plastic actually, so. And then we got a metal frame. In the metal frame, I'm gonna be framing a double exposure that I did last summer. and that one's gonna have spacers. And then the wood frame is gonna be a mat, and it's just a little mixed media piece that I did. Yeah. Oh, are we? Oh, we're good. We're going. Okay. Sorry, I didn't know we were going yet. Okay. So yeah, but that's just what I'm framing today. And okay, so first I want to teach you guys about hinging, putting your artwork on the backing board. And there's a little diagram in your handout that shows you a T-hinge if you want to flip to that page. I have already attached mine here because I didn't want it to take too much time. But you can see here that it is a flap, basically. And these two X's are my T-hinges. So what you do, and this is when you're going to use your acid-free hinging tape. There are a lot of different brands that you can buy of this. I would just go online and type in acid-free hinging tape and just choose one that doesn't require you to get it wet, because some of them are very conservation friendly and you don't want to get too complicated with it. Just get the regular hinging tape. So what you do is you cut piece so that you have two pieces, and then the first piece will go underneath and behind with the sticky side facing up. So it'll look like that at first. And then so this is why I did the hinging before, because the tape with the double-sided tape is always so tricky. Well, we'll just pretend like it's stuck. So that'll go behind there, and then you'll put the other piece facing downward, the sticky side down on top of that. So then it's hinged, therefore we have a T-hinge. There's a few different ways that you can hinge artwork. I think that this is gonna be the easiest. Before you hinge it, you wanna place it on, well, let me back up a little bit. I recommend, instead of buying custom cut foam core, to buy an entire sheet of foam core. You're gonna save quite a bit of money. I think it's like 15 bucks for the entire sheet. And then this way you can actually, it makes it a little easier to line it up. Because before you would have to get it perfectly centered, and then you would have to make sure that it stays there while you do the T-hinge. With this technique, you can kind of generally get it in the right place on your piece of foam core that's larger than what you need. You can make sure that it has generally enough room for the mat to fit with space around it. And then do your hinging. And then at that point, you want to get your double-sided tape. So the tape that I'm using here it's called ATG. I believe it's made by Scotch. This is a really good tape for framing. Another one that they sell at Ben Franklin, it's called Sookwang, SOOKWANG. This is an awesome acid-free double-sided tape. I would recommend getting this. So what you want to do once you have it hinged is you want to put double-sided tape around on the back side on the back side of the mat, and you want to get it close to the edge as possible because you don't want the tape to get stuck on your art. So we're just sticking it on the outside edge like so. And then I'm just gonna take this off actually. So once you got that, oh, you'll take this off here. And then basically you want to slowly and carefully lower it over your piece. And I don't know, you can see that for this particular one, I've left a border around my piece. So that's an option that you have when framing. I could also have just brought it right up to the edge. It's really just personal aesthetic preference, or you can kind of use it to make a statement. There's no right or wrong when it comes to that. So I found my place. So now I'm gonna just firmly stick it down. I also real quick want to point out that hopefully you can see this. I chose this mat because it is the same color as the white of this paper. If you have a white mat, that is your goal. You want to get the white as close to the white that is in your piece. If it's not, it's going to look real bad. Whatever white is more yellow is just going to look super yellow, and the other one's going to look very stark, and they're just going to mess with each other basically. So once you have it down here, you will get, this is where your cutting mat comes in handy. You want to get a ruler, metal ruler preferably, but you can use any ruler. And then you'll just hold it right up here and cut. You can also just, whoops, you can also just use the mat as a guide. And this might take some practice, but you can actually just cut it right along. And if you do cut into the mat a little bit, it's okay, because the rabbit's gonna cover up the edge actually. So you don't have to be perfect with your cutting and whatnot. Like there is room to mess up basically with framing. Okay, so we got that piece there, and this is mounted art. So at this point, you can just take this, put it in a cellophane wrapper like this. You can buy this at Ben Franklin also. Stick it in here, tape it up nice. You can sell it just like that. And bonus points if you made it into a standard size. And that is a selling point that you can give your customer. You can say, hey, this is going to fit right into an 8x10 frame of your choice. And you can buy that at any store, and it's ready to go in there. You just pop it in. So that's a good place to stop if maybe you're starting out and you don't have a big budget for framing. Oh, and then I'll just talk real quick about the one that isn't getting a mat. I, in this case, just used very light kind of double-sided tape on this, because I know that it's not gonna get taken out of this frame. Generally, you would probably want to hinge up here onto the foam core, but you don't have to make it that complicated if you don't want to. You can just stick some double-sided tape back there. That's acid-free, most importantly. So yeah, this is just foam core back here, and then the print is on front. Now we're gonna move on to glass. So I'm gonna don my gloves at this point. Mostly, so these are just latex gloves, but you can use a glove like this. This is like kind of a garden glove. I got this at Bargain Barn, I think. You just want to make sure it doesn't leave fingerprints on your glass mostly. That's what we're trying to avoid with the gloves, besides not getting cut. So when you get a piece of glass from Ben Franklin, like I did with this piece, it's usually going to come in 2 pieces of cardboard that they cut for you to protect it. And then you'll get it out and just kind of make an assessment of it by holding it up to like a light source or against a dark background. So I can see that this has stuff on it. It's maybe scratched, I don't know. If it was scratched, you could totally take it back to Ben Franklin and say, hey, this is scratched. Please cut me a new one, which is a perk of getting it cut at Ben Franklin. So I have tried to clean glass in so many ways and been really frustrated for several years. And then I figured out this little trick, which is so simple. It's just rubbing alcohol and eyeglasses microfiber cloth. You just put a little bit on there. And then you just, can you see? Just little circular motions, clean the glass. And I forgot to mention, when you go to frame something, put something soft down, like the packing paper or this kind of foamy stuff, because then you can set the glass right down on it. You don't have to worry about scratches. You can set your frame down on it and you don't have to worry about scratches. So clean both sides, just give it a good once over, and then you can hold it up and assess what is there, what is not. And I can see that there's a little problem area in this corner. So then I'm gonna try to scrub it, and it is coming off, it seems. A lot of times what happens, kind of like adhesive will get stuck to the glass, and you can get it off with this technique. Sometimes it's scratched though, and you can't get it off. So, oh, there it goes. So once you got it clean, I'm just probably gonna say it's good enough for this presentation, because you could really go on and on with the glass cleaning. So this is where the static brush, the anti-static brush,
Hold that right button, take it out and hold it for a second.
yeah, that right there.
Could you hold it?
Oh, yeah. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna have your mounted piece here in front of you, and then you're gonna have your glass, and you kind of want to just hold it like this. Get all the dust that's on your piece off and look real close at it, make sure it's good. And then you're gonna sweep all the dust off of the side of the glass that's gonna be facing your art. So I just kind of do this. And then you just pull it up to your glass like that. And then you can lean it back and you can observe if there is anything behind the glass. So I just want to make sure that I point out that it is very important for you to make sure that there is not a piece of hair or a fingerprint or a smudge or whatever may be in there. You don't want that in between the glass and the mat. That's not a good look. It looks unprofessional. It looks like you didn't take your time, and it's distracting for the viewer to see that. So this is a really important step, and this might take a few times to get right. So maybe you bring it up and you can see that there's hair there, so you'll just come back down, you'll bring it up, you'll do the same thing, brush, 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 and then bring it back up here until it looks good. Once it looks good, you're good to go. You just set it down there. So then we have our spacers. I just want to make sure I'm not moving ahead of myself. Yes, okay. So spacers, perhaps you don't want a mat. Perhaps you just want the frame and the photo. You're gonna need to keep the glass from touching the photo. That is because buckling can sometimes happen with paper products, depending on the environment that they're in. Also, if you have a glossy finish, it will literally adhere to the glass. And if you try to take it out, it's gonna completely rip off your photo onto the glass. So that is a few of the reasons why we want to avoid doing that. And it's,
Show those, maybe put them down on the white.
yeah, so spacers come in all sizes, well, a few sizes. Starts at a 1/16 of an inch. That's this one right here. And that's really all that you're going to need for photography, because you just want a little layer in between the glass and the photo. It goes all the way up to like 1/4 inch, I think, and that would be if you had like thicker materials. This one's a little thicker, but it's basically just a plastic piece that has a adhesive side that you pull this off, and yeah, there's the adhesive side to it. So let me just put this here. You can see. So this is my piece of glass. I've already cleaned this one. And I've already stuck spacers on 3 of the sides. So this is the last side. So what you're gonna do is you take your piece of spacer and you just hold it right up here next to, can you see that? You just hold it right up here next to the glass on the edge, and then you just make a little pencil mark. These spacers are thin enough that you can just cut them with scissors. So you'll just do a little cut. And then you want to just hold it up here, make sure it fits. It does. So then I will stick it on. And you can buy just a whole stick of these from Ben Franklin. Sometimes it's a little difficult with gloves, actually. So it's a lot of pulling of adhesive backing with framing. Get annoying sometimes. So then you're just gonna stick that right on the very edge of the glass. I wanna maybe get it to where you can see that a little clearer. I also do have an illustration in the handout that shows you the layers of glass. So you can see it comes right up there to the edge. This is the back side of the glass that's going to face the artwork. That is important because the spacer sits behind the rabbit, and that's why you can't see the spacer. But if you don't have it right on the edge, then you'll start to be able to see the spacer, and we want to avoid that. Also, when you're doing spacers, you want to make sure that the glass is properly sized, because that's going to affect whether or not you see the spacer as well. So you want to get an exact measurement for that. And then same thing with this one. We'll just have it face the other way. Get my little, get the little brush. Bring it up here. And that's the wrong direction. So we flip it. Okay, there we go. So those 2 pieces are now ready to be fitted into the frame. So first with the wood one, just pull this up here. So this is how you want it to be when you go to do it, to fit it in, and you'll just pull it over the top like that. And then you'll just pull it away from the edge a little bit. You're gonna hold it against the rabbit and then just flip it over. So you can see here, you can see if there's anything behind the glass, whatnot. You might have to do that step several times. If it's a large piece, it's harder to flip over. I've flipped really big pieces before. So at this point, this is kind of a mysterious part of framing. How do we keep it from falling out the back? There are a few ways to do that. You can use a staple gun. This one's electric. The way that you would hold it is it's not on, so I won't staple you. You would hold it like that and then drive the staple in this way. Now, if you only had nails or glazier points, You could use that, it would be difficult, but what you would want to do is you would want to use like a flathead and then hammer it in like that. What I highly recommend, if you are gonna be framing a lot of stuff, it's really worth the investment to get a point gun. So this is made for framing. You can go to Ben Franklin and have them put points in the back for you too. That's more of a secret. But they might not always do it. They might be too busy. So get you one of these, or another way. What you're gonna do is you're just gonna hold it up against there and then just drive it in. This one's a little janky. Oh, yep. What you want to do, oh, really doesn't like this plastic frame. What you what you want to do is get your corners. So if I can get a corner, there we go. You want to get your corners first. And this is probably like a little overkill for this small of a frame, but I'm just showing you guys how you would do it. We'll just leave that one alone. And then I would just put a few points in, and then I would turn it over and make sure it's still good, because sometimes what happens is if you jostle the frame, it'll move wood chips and stuff underneath it. If it looks good, you can do the middle pieces. No, you can't. Well, this one's good enough. This is why we don't use plastic frames. So yeah, that piece is in the frame. It'll be ready to be closed up. Now for the metal ones, these guys can be rather mysterious. I know the first time I saw one at a thrift store, I was like, I would like this frame, but I have no idea how to put it together or take it apart. It has these little corner brackets here, and there we go. And it works with tension. So these little corner brackets, there's a piece underneath, there's a piece on top. You slide it in. You guys see me? Trying to slide it in like that. And then when you screw it, it creates tension and it keeps it in there. And that's what keeps the corners together. So the tighter the screw, the tighter the tension, more together the frame is going to be. You really want to, the tricky part is making sure that you're holding, kind of want to hold the frame like this. You're holding that corner together and screwing in at the same time. Sometimes the back, like this one, won't look like it's totally together, but the front does. That's all that you really care about, is that the front corners look good. So when you have a piece that's metal like this, what you're going to do is you're going to assemble 2 out of the 4 corners, and you're going to leave the 4th arm is going to be one of the smaller ones. And then you're going to just slide it in here basically like that. And then you hold it against the rabbet and flip it again. So then you'll just take your final leg with your 2 little corner brackets in there and get it on in. And then you just tighten while holding it. Oops. Oh, maybe tight. Okay, so that's pretty good. And then these little guys, spring clips. How many of you have been confused by these before? I will show you the proper way that they go in. Yeah, they're right here. So this is the proper orientation. They're like little hills. And you just put them Hopefully you're seeing this underneath like so. Let me take these gloves off. Yeah, let me try to get like a better, maybe this one. This one, okay. So that's how it is. You push it down and then slide it on in like that. And if you need to get it out, I would recommend using like a flathead screwdriver to kind of, and then they will spring up at your face. So beware of that. And then you just want, if this was a larger frame, I would put one on each side of the corner, and then I would put them in the middle as necessary. But because this is so small, we just need one on each side. Okay, so that's in. That's how you put those in, which is a great thing about metal frames. You don't really need a lot of tools to do that. So we got those two guys. Next, we'll just do a little dust cover on this one. So dust cover is going to give you a really professional look. And it gives you something to attach like a business card to as well. I would recommend doing them. It also keeps the dust out, as the name denotes. So what you'll do here is you'll take your double-sided tape and put it all the way around on the back. For me, this was one of the things with framing that I was always so perplexed by before I knew how to do it. I was like, how do they make these fit so perfectly? So you'll just take a piece of packaging paper. This is kind of a flimsy version. I would recommend getting a little thicker probably. Hopefully this doesn't break for me. Now this piece, it doesn't matter. You can see I'm just roughly cutting because you're gonna trim the excess off anyways. So you just wanna make sure that it covers it all. Then you come over here and take your backing off. Make sure that the tape stays while you take the backing off. This roll of tape was kind of old, so that's why it's giving me some grief. And then you'll take this guy, because we have this edge here that is straight from the roll. I would just line it up with one of the edges. You don't want it to go over. And then you'll just kind of pull from that side and get it taut and just pull around kind of like so. Oh yeah, I knew that was gonna happen. And then just press it flat. So this is when your razor blade's gonna come in handy. You can totally use a box cutter for this. You could use like a ruler and you could cut it like that. Another way to do it is you kind of move it to the edge of the table and then you slide the razor along the side. Hopefully you guys are seeing that. And then another way to do it is you kind of just use your finger as a guide and you just kind of freehand all the way down. So it's really whatever you're comfortable with. I kind of like that last way, but that does take some practice, I will say. And this is the back side, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Don't beat yourself up over it if it's not. So there's a dust cover. And then at this point, you would attach your D-rings, which I'm running a little low on time, I think. So I will just tell you guys about where to measure. You're going to take your tape measure, and you want to measure the entirety of the frame. So this is the way that it's facing. So I'm going to take this measurement from the top to the bottom of the frame. So that's about 8¼ inches. You're going to divide that by 3. And this is in your handout, so don't feel pressured to remember that. Then whatever that number is, you're going to take that and mark it from the top. So this is the top of the frame. I'm going to measure down from that top, mark it on one side, mark it on the other side. And that's where your D-rings are going to go into. So the D-rings will go like this. And at this point, you would take an awl and just make an impression, because this is really going to help to guide the screw in. Otherwise, you can mess up the dust cover by slipping off while you're trying to put the screw in. So like so. I'll just put one in for you if it doesn't give me too much grief. So, and this is also plastic, which might give me problems. And it went in. Okay, so that's how the D-ring will sit. And the reason for the whole dividing it by 3 is because that is the best way for the frame to hang from the wall. So that's going to make it so that it's not coming too far off, and it's not, you know, and then you can move it around and such. So that is an important note for that. Then with the wood one, I already measured this guy out and put one in. These guys here, this is a little nicer than the basic ones that you get most of the time. They look like this, but they work the same way. You would either pop that guy in there, or you pop that guy like so. I already made my mark. It's right there. And then you screw down, so it's the same kind of tension that's holding it in. So you screw that down. And so it's kind of looks the same idea as the D-rings then. And then all that's left is the wire. I recommend getting the self-wrapping wire because it's very easy to use. So, and there's also a visual, an illustration of this knotting technique in your handout for you to refer to later. What you're gonna do is loop it through. Ooh, stabbed me. And then come back around and loop it again. And this knot has a name. I don't remember what it is. It has a few different names. Sorry. And then if you can see, you bring it back through. And then when you bring it back like that, that's when you start wrapping. And you just want to make the coil tight. And then cut it with your wire cutters. You don't need to really wrap that much, honestly, but whatever you feel comfortable with. But cut the excess off, because a lot of times I see the excess wire, that's gonna scratch your wall, and it might scratch you just like I did. I got scratched. And then to find out where it needs to be, hopefully you can see this. It needs to be a little loose, but not too loose so that it hangs over here, because you're gonna have probably a nail or something. So you want to imagine that the nail is gonna be somewhere like right there. And then that's how you will decide where to start your knot for the other side. I will just leave it like that for now, and then just move on to our last thing, which are bumpers. So bumpers are gonna go on the bottom right, or not the bottom right, the bottom two corners. You can fit them on the metal frames just like that. And then same with the wood. And these come, you can get felt, plastic, there's all sorts of bumpers, it doesn't matter, whichever you like or is cheaper. So just like that. And this is gonna help with the way that it hangs off of the wall. It's gonna give you a little bit of space from the wall. It's gonna protect the wall from getting scratched by the frame. And it's also gonna keep it from going unlevel on you. It's gonna keep it in the same place. And then you can also, where you go? You can use sawtooth hangers if you want, these guys. But I think that the best result you're gonna get is from using the D-rings with the wire. And I'm pretty sure that's just about it. Hopefully I got some time for questions. Yeah, that is it. So do you guys have any questions? Okay.
So, here's the T-hinges, what do you think about using archival mounting corners?
For what?
Archival mounting corners?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've used those before and you can totally use those. It's gonna be pretty much the same process. You would, because this is our mat, so if you were using mounting corners, you would be using a mat because you need to cover it up. So something that you're gonna need to consider if you're using those is how far in you have to go to conceal the corners. So you might have to crop in with your window opening just a little bit more to compensate for the corners taking up some space. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just thought, since you hadn't mentioned it, I thought.
Yeah, they're good. They're good to use, and they're archival as well. So that's a good alternative way to mount your work. Oh, actually, something that I didn't go over is dry mounting. I totally forgot about that. You can get your stuff dry mounted onto foam core or mounting core backing board at Ben Franklin. The thing about that is it's permanent. So it has its downsides, but the upside is if you have a very glossy finished photo and it has some ripples or something in it, that's gonna erase those and you're not gonna see that anymore. It gives a really nice finish. So that is an option for you at Ben Franklin. They can do it there. Yes. Oh, sorry. Where'd my water bottle go? Oh, there.
Just probably a dumb question. The anti-static brush, does it maintain its anti-static after you've taken it out of the case and used it a lot?
Yeah,
or-
they do. You can even wash them, I'm pretty sure. And these, I'm pretty sure is photography equipment kind of stuff for lenses and all that. So I think it would be helpful for you guys to have. I use it for my lens sometimes for my camera, yeah.
A few questions. One, where would you get the anti-static brush?
Online,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Another,
Yeah, we don't have it here, that's for sure, yeah.
Another question is, when I'd have my photos framed at Ben Franklin, they would put the paper on the back, but it would always tear. I don't know if there's another material you can put on the back that would be like canvas or something that wouldn't do that.
I mean, it happens, like definitely dust covers tear. What are you doing with your frames?
Just handling them.
Okay. Yeah, I think that if that is an issue that you encounter, then you can investigate getting like a thicker paper that should hold up a little better. As far as alternative materials, you could technically use like a plastic sheet. It's not going to look good unless you had something that was opaque. If you could get plastic opaque sheet I don't see why you wouldn't be able to use that for a dust cover.
And then those little, I forget what you call them, the things you call were like hills. What
The
is
spring
purpose?
clips.
Spring clips. What is the purpose of the spring?
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So the spring clips are what is holding the mounted art against the frame. So just like I put the points in on the back of this, that's what the spring clips are doing for the metal frame. But you can't use points with the metal, so this is the alternative way. And I also want to mention that if you find like a metal frame at a thrift store and it doesn't have the hardware, you can go to Ben Franklin and you can buy the pieces of hardware individually, for like cents, like 5 cents per spring clip or something like that. So if you find a good metal frame, you can totally make that work again.
Okay, and then another question is on that double-sided tape that you put around on the edges of the mat. The purpose of that is to keep the mat board from shifting at all? Is that the?
What was that? Sorry?
Well, okay, what is the purpose of the double-sided tape that you put around the mat?
Okay, so the mat will shift. So no matter what, even if it's held really tightly against the glass, it will slightly move. And say, for example, like with this one, how I have a white border, if the mat moves, then you're gonna have this square against this square not lining up, and that's gonna be very apparent. So even the slightest little move is going to move those corners, and once you move the corners, it doesn't look right. So you do need to make sure that the mat is attached somehow. The way that I just showed you, I do it that way because I like to cut it out of the larger piece of foam core. But traditionally with conservation framing, you would actually do a hinge for the mat as well. And that would make sure that the mat stays in place without it actually being attached to the backing board with double-sided tape. So there's a lot of ways to do it. But the way that I taught you is my preferred way because I think you can save money and it's fast and it's good enough,
When you do the spring clips, don't be cheap and not use enough.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
bugs get behind your glass and the frames. It's just, I don't know how they do it, but they get
They
there.
really do. They're sneaky.
So you want to make it really tight.
Yeah.
And use a lot of spring clips.
Yeah. That's what, the points in the back and the spring clips are so important. Thank you for pointing that out, David, because over time, and that's what the dust cover is for, stuff's gonna get back there and it's gonna creep up inside, and you wanna do everything in your power to make sure that all your hard work doesn't just get erased because of that.
I don't have a question. It's really a tip.
Okay.
With the dust cover, if you don't get it exactly taut the first time, spritz it with a little water, and then when it shrinks, it'll tight as a drum.
Hot tip. I like that. Never done that before.
Jim, I'll come to you.
Well, I can speak loud.
But the people on Zoom can't hear you.
Zoom land needs to hear your voice.
We're recording this.
So it appears that you would not use a dust cover with the metal frame.
You do not. Yeah, there's not really anywhere to attach it. And also this hanging material gets in the way, which is why it's important to use as many spring clips as possible, and you can buy more if you don't get enough. You can go buy more.
Okay, second question would be the bumpers. It would appear that you're only using, when it's hanging on the wall, the bottom bumpers. So I think we normally put bumpers all the way around, but what is the usual practice?
Just the bottom, yeah. Because actually the way that a frame hangs off the wall, it's a little tilted back. So the bumpers make it a little less tilted, besides the other things that I discussed, yes.
Okay, I have a question about masking, and you have all these dimensions here. Are those the opening in the mask as well as the outside diameter?
The mat.
The mat.
Okay.
Sorry, not the mat.
So yes, those sizes, those standard sizes that I have listed, those are standard sizes for frames and also for prints. So the opening actually is going to be a little bit smaller because you need to cover the outside edge in order to hide it behind the mat. So if you had a photo that was 8x10 exactly, then your mat opening size would actually need to be 7 3/4 by 9 3/4.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello? Yeah. So I'm sort of curious, you talked about the hinging as a conservation hinge. What's the history behind that? Is that so that you can change the mat in the future without destroying the print or the artwork?
Yeah, so the goal of conservation framing is to not touch the art at all, as little as possible. Like, you're basically creating this environment for it to just be gently placed inside, and then everything, it just kind of folds around it, but it's secure. So generally with conservation framing, using double-sided tape is kind of frowned upon. They want you to use only like the highest quality hinging tape. And that's kind of what I mentioned, the hinging tape that you have to get wet. Avoid that stuff because it's a little difficult to work with unless you want to. You can get so deep into conservation, like I barely scratched the surface on all of that stuff. But yes, you want to avoid touching the artwork as much as possible, and the hinges are going to help you to do that.
So for a print that we can make obviously inexpensively compared to a priceless piece of artwork, whether it's some letter from your grandfather or something like that that you want to preserve, is prepared differently than like a print that I can just get.
Exactly. So conservation framing is what every piece in a museum is framed like. That's the standard that museums follow for framing priceless works of art. So we don't need to go that intensely with it, but you kind of want to use it as like a starting point to pull from and decide what you do and what you don't need, kind of thing.
Yeah. Hi, Hannah. I just wanted to thank you a lot. I wish we'd have done this years ago before we started doing all the exhibits that we did at the frame shop and elsewhere. Now that we have this information, we can expect every show, every piece will be professionally ready to hang, make it a lot easier on your exhibit staff. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
So many years ago, I used to use something called photo mount, and I recognize that's not conservation, but is that still used?
Yeah, I think you're talking about a type of dry mounting.
Well, was a spray, you'd spray on the back of it, and then that's permanent.
It's the same. So yeah, it's not conservation. Dry mounting is not conservation. There are types of mounting like that you can do. It's called mount core, and it's pressure activated adhesive. So what you'll do is you'll just place your photo on that, and then you'll use a kind of something to put over your photo, and then you're gently going to apply pressure to adhere it to the backing board. That is conservation, and it's supposed to be removable. It's supposed to be, but you know. Yes?
They make dry mount tissue.
Yeah, no, they make all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
But you can remove it with heat.
No, yeah, there's several different types, but the type that they have at Ben Franklin is not removable. The dry mounting that you'll do there, but you can buy mount core at Ben Franklin, and they will do that for you as well if you want that service done for you.
When someone asks you what frame style or matte color, what, as you draw from your experience, what do you use to recommend?
So when I analyze any work of art to be framed, the first thing that I look for is the focal point. What is the subject? What are we being drawn to? That is the thing that we want to accentuate with the frame and the matting. So you'll want to pay attention to where it is, what color it is, how big it is. That's going to kind of dictate the style of framing that goes around it, because you want it to you want to enhance that, not distract. So if it was black and white photo and it had a very distinct, like bright white focal point, maybe like a flower or something, then I would probably choose a white mat and I would try to match the white as closely as possible to that white of the focal point. That's going to make the flower pop even more than it did without the frame. And that's the whole point, is you want it to enhance. I already said that, but it's got to enhance it, not distract. And then as far as the frame goes, you can kind of play around with the frame as far as like matching a style to maybe your subject matter. So something that's really common is if you have some type of like Asian art, a lot of people will choose like a bamboo frame. And that works really well with that because it matches up. There's bamboo in the art, there's bamboo on the frame. So that's an example of kind of how you can choose from the big wide range of materials that you have to choose from, how you can kind of start to narrow it down. Yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Anybody else?
Thinking about replacing, like not having 100 frames, and if I have standard size frames, any suggestions for how to like take stuff out and put new things in standard frames?
Yeah, so I would recommend removing, if you can, so like a ready-made frame is gonna have points in the back of it. Those are really handy. You can actually just fold those points up and reuse them most of the time. Just fold them back down over your art. Sometimes it's not gonna line up and you need to redo it. If that's not the case, I would just pull everything out of it. And then I would actually clean the frame because the frames are dirty. Same good, the glass that comes in ready-made frames, disgustingly dirty. Like, I don't even know how it happens. And then the frame itself will be dirty. So I recommend taking everything apart and cleaning it very well. And then you can assess if the glass is even usable, because sometimes the glass in those frames comes and it's scratched and it's smudged and you just can't use it actually. Are you asking like how to store that kind of stuff?
Get the spring clips out so they don't sort of scratch the foam core board while you're doing it.
Well, that is kind of unavoidable. There is a tool actually that's specially made for the spring clips. It was on one of my other slides that you can, it's just, you take it and like, I don't know how to describe this. You just pull it right out. It's really okay if the foam core gets scratched. As long as the front of the frame looks good, like I feel like you're probably doing a great job. It's great if you can get the back looking, you know, spick and span as well. But if it's not, that's okay, you know? Yeah.
I do, I put my spring clips in upside down and they come out a lot easier. They don't, the tips don't gouge into the foam
They don't
core.
hold it down properly if you put them in upside down,
Okay.
is the thing.
Well, I've never had an issue with doing that way, so.
Yeah, they just, you get a lot more pressure and a lot further of an area when you use them that way.
Okay, this is our last question. So, here you go.
Some feedback, Henry. If you use a flat screwdriver and a little dexterity, you can just pop those right out without scratching the foam core at all. I've done it thousands of times. Janice says needle nose pliers work great too. Ellen says that. And Ben Franklin feedback. couple of visits ago, they told me they were phasing out the double pair of links where you make your custom made frame.
Oh, the metal?
Yeah.
You can still buy them online. That's
Sure.
unfortunate that they're phasing that out. I don't know why they would, because it's a huge seller there.
And just something to watch for with Ben Franklin is I had them recently cut a large mat. It was 1620 inside, I think 2228 outside, and it wasn't square.
Yeah, so I kind of noticed that actually with the last mat that I got there, and this happened while I worked there, and you need to basically recalibrate the machine. So I'm going to tell them when I drop some stuff off that they need to recalibrate their machine.
Well, I went back and said it's not square. I showed them. They went, oh yeah, they cut another one. It was identical. I had to turn that one in. They said, okay, we're going to call the calibrator Monday morning. And so
Yeah.
they showed
Okay,
that.
so they should. I've been through this whole thing with that machine. Yeah, it does that sometimes. So this is a good point. When you buy materials from Ben Franklin, double check the measurements. Probably while you're there at the counter, because it's going to be a lot messy than you coming back later and having to explain everything to them. Double check the measurements, because no one's perfect, but they will recut it for you if it was wrong. And also, I just want to mention that right now at the Center for the Arts, we have an amazing photography show up. It is a little risque. 17 and older are advised to see it, but David Muskin has been shooting black and white films since 1976, starting down in LA and working his way up to Reno. And he doesn't crop and he doesn't edit. It's all just raw film. His compositions are insane. And he's going to be doing an informal gallery walkthrough at the Center for the Arts on September 3rd, 5 to 7 p.m. And so I really hope to see all of you there for that.
Well, let's thank Hannah for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. That was great. I don't know about you guys, but I really caught a few things that I've been doing wrong. And hopefully nobody notices. So thank you very much. Rachel, back to you.
All right, thanks everybody. We're going to take a short intermission, about 10 minutes. So please, those at home, stand up. Here we've got some drinks and snacks in the back. And about 10 minutes, I'll call you all back together and I'll announce the winners from the July photo categories. And we'll move into the critique. Alrighty.
Yeah, otherwise we're gonna have to bring it. Yeah. I think you got some really good ones. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff. You know, it's kind of, man. I didn't have enough time to get to the dray last 3 or 4. I think we wing it.
There we go. Okay, folks, we're going to get started. If you folks would please take your seat.
So Peter, if we're making a difference, what I do with this camera, should I aim it at the screen?
I've got the list.
They won't need it all. Oh, we gotta get the lights.
Could someone please hit the lights in the back? Mike Shea, our light expert, please. Thank you. We're going to start the second half of our program with announcing the winners of last month's photo categories for the newer folks. Our club members voted for each of the categories, photo categories, and I'm going to announce the winners here. No pressure, George. Okay. Now I need to be able to see. Sorry. Thank you. All right. Starting with, are we on this? Oh, Thank you. All right, flashlight is a good thing. Thank you, Chris. All right, starting with the sign subject, this is Budweiser Brewery by Michael Quinn. Winner of Abstract is entitled I Know the Pieces Fit by Chris Schiller. Best Architecture entitled Alcatraz by Gary Emanuel. Best Fauna entitled Five Hunting Eagles by Janice Rosner. Best Flora, Quiver Tree Fascination, also by Janice Rosner. Best Natural Landscape entitled Rolling Off El Cap by Tom Quinn. Best Night Photography, Kilauea or Mount Doom by Tom Quinn. Best People, Proud Mama by Brian Dunbar. Best People, a tie, entitled Contemplation by Rachel Rosenthal. Best Travel, entitled Meteora Monasteries, Greece.
No.
Oh, by Ed, so that is not that one. This is Best Travel, another tie, entitled Laundry Day by Rachel Rosenthal. Maybe this one's it. Meteora Monasteries, Greece by Ed Sylvester. Best Creative Fantasy in Anything Goes, entitled Outer Limits by Mike Shea. Best Black and White, entitled White and Black Portrait by Robert Arnold. Best Color, Spring in a Vase by Suzanne Hambleton. And Best Phone, entitled Montana Sunset by Larry Leffman. So big round of applause, please, for our July winners. All right, I now turn this over to Chris Schiller and David Wong, our judges for this evening. It's all yours, Kathy.
So thank you to Chris Schiller and David Wong for being our judges tonight. Appreciate it. And we're going to start with a sign subject. This is titled, so I will give the title, they will critique, and then we will give the photographer's name. This first image is Hide and Seek.
Can you hear? Okay, sounds like you can hear me. So I'm going to preface the start here. These are just our own thoughts, and that there are no absolutes. We don't hold the magic answers to any of this. So please take that as you hear our comments. There's more than one way to look at any of these things. And then the other thing I wanted to take a few seconds and ask, if you are interested in being a critiquer, we'd love to have you, because I think I'm getting kind of tired of hearing myself talk, and it'd be nice to have some new blood, and we learn a lot of different things with different people. So please.
Can I add, David, that we do training? So if you're interested, don't hesitate.
Yes. All right. So with that, hide and seek. Well, I mean, this really hits you in the face, because this is a great sense of story. The focus on the man, the bull moving away, looking at him, that his looking at the bull. That you'll notice the focus is all on the guy in the Coors thing there. The photographer had the presence of mind to make sure that he had in focus what the story was, and there's really nothing else to say about that. It was great.
And just to let you know, our assigned subject is surprise. And the maker of this photo is Grace Farrig. This next image is, well, I think they forgot to title it, but it's P81000064.
Test. There we go. I love the look of pure joy on the two boys' faces in this photo. The photographer captured the fun of the moment very well. The photographer used a slow enough shutter speed to get a little motion blur on the white car and had the serendipity to get a third boy without the blur. I tried cropping the left side and the bottom of this photo to eliminate the yellow car in the lower left and thought that it tightened and improved the composition of the image. Nice shot.
What is by Fred Crowder? And he says it should be titled Wow. This next image, Unexpected Visit.
So this one is, it's all about the framing, the composition, the window framing was great, the expression. I don't know how they must have paid this cow to do this. The one thing about this one that isn't necessarily obvious, you have to be, obviously he had to be very close to the cow, but that changed the relationship of the camera to the subject. That's one of the things that makes this one so powerful. If you could have gotten back 20 feet and zoomed in, it wouldn't have had the impact of the camera being very close. Those of you that are familiar with the photographer Nick Brandt and his elephants, being close to your subject really does a magical thing, and this really worked well for this one. My only question is, the sky is awfully sharp. I don't know if the sky was replaced, but I love it. Great depth of field, great background.
And the photographer is Ingrid Lockhart. This next image, On Deck.
Turkeys are such alien creatures. It's a wonder that we eat them at all. The photographer has done a fine job of catching and enhancing that alienness by taking these two frames when the turkey was fluffing its feathers and combining them into what looks like a double exposure. This gives the impression of a double-headed creature with four legs. The image is well composed, and the apparent softness of the image can be forgiven once you realize it's a double exposure. I tried adding clarity and vignetting in Lightroom, and I thought that these changes made for a little better image. Thanks.
The photographer is Jeff Alstatter. This next image is Discerning Eye-Level Encounter in Los Padres National Forest. Oh, disconcerting. Sorry, not discerning. Disconcerting eye-level encounter.
So this photo has great shallow depth of field. I mean, there is the sharpness and focus of the snake's head, and that little catch light in the snake's eye makes all the difference. And everything, it's a fairly busy background, but the fact that the depth of field is so shallow that you really see the sharpness of the snake's head makes this one work. I think my only thought on this one is those little, I think they're white flowers in the lower left-hand corner. They could have been toned down maybe just a little bit so that there isn't anything pulling our eye away from the snake's head. Nice shot.
The snake was captured by Brad Oliver. And that ends assigned subject. We're now in the abstract category. Our first image is Curvature.
Looking outward at a river through clouds from a great height, or inward at a blood vessel on our retina? These questions are why I love abstract images like this one. This photo has enough organic elements to keep our attention and little pieces of detail to keep our eyes moving around and exploring. I like the choice of black and white for this image, and I feel that the choice of heavy vignetting adds to the abstraction by turning a possibly flat plane to something more sphere-like. Very nice.
And the photographer is Ellen Davis. This next image is Garnet Sand at the Beach.
So this is a great abstract for me. I'm not a great abstract photographer, but this one I can understand. It's abstract, and it has enough of a story or form in it that I'm looking, with, obviously we can imagine the two eyes, eyebrows, maybe even a mouth there. I think everything in this image keeps your eye in the frame, and the fact that I can maybe identify something
keeps me wanting to look more at the image itself, looking for more stuff. Nice.
And the photographer is Tom Quinn, and that ends abstract. We are now into the architecture category. This first image, Bridgeport Reborn.
This is a classic perspective photograph of a bridge with the twist of having the main curving bridge supports breaking through the hard angles of the structure. The choice of a centered composition enhances the feeling of traveling through the tunnel of the structure. The photographer did a good job of exposure to capture both the dark shadows and what must have been the bright landscape at the far end, or maybe they use bracketed exposures. Thanks for taking us through to the other side.
And the photographer is Mike Weitzman. This next image is Machu Picchu view.
I think it's always great when a photo uses natural framing elements like we have here. In this case, we also have repeating patterns of the stones from the stones in front to the stones in back. There's the differences in shapes, from the pyramid of the building in back, and the icing on the cake is the capturing of the two people, and that really made the photo pop for me. Although my only concern with that, this is supposed to be in the architectural category, and having the two people in here, it kind of took away from it being an architecture shot, and it became more of a story. I love at any rate, but I'm a little, I wonder if it's not in the right category.
And the photographer is Gary Emanuel. This next image, North Star Museum.
This image could fit comfortably either in the abstract or the architecture category. This is a great example of compositional choices in a photograph. What was included in the frame and what was left out was not accidental. I found my eye roaming and circling the various elements and finding a lot to keep my attention. The bolts are especially interesting, but the curves of bright sunlight and dripping rust are a great counterpoint to the straight steel ridges of this huge machine. The high contrast of the image was handled well by the photographer, and I tried and failed to find any way of improving this image.
The photographer is June Anderson. This next image is Water Wheel.
So I really like the use of light and shadow in this shot. There's the light and shadow, the various shapes that pick up the strong architectural lines, even the materials and the surface of the materials itself, from the what do you call that, plating in the lower right to some of the discoloring of the surfaces in the other sections of it. And it just ultimately very complex and satisfying look at different type of architecture.
The photographer is Robert Arnold. This next image, Stairs to Everywhere.
The wide angle and skewed verticality of this shot helped to heighten the M.C. Escher-like feeling of this image. It's almost as if the architect was hoping someone would photograph their building from this perspective. This image is like a mathematical puzzle, and the reflection off the windows makes the solution require a folding of space-time to solve. I turned up the saturation a little bit and thought it might improve the image a little, but actually on the screen here in the room, it looks just fine to me. Very well done.
The photographer is Fred Clausens. And that ends architecture. We are now into fauna. This first image is Come Swim With Me.
So this action shot has really very appropriate shutter speed, sufficient enough to freeze the action and give texture to the water droplets. And at first I was thinking that I wanted to see the dolphin more in the center part of the frame, but actually I came to like this very much the way it is, because there's a complexity of this with the dolphin as part of it, the foam on the water as second part, and the shiny water as the third part. giving it a nice art complexity. I also like that the photographer left enough nose room, which is important for this type of shot, to keep the sense of the dolphin moving into the frame.
The photographer is Janice Rossner. This next image is titled Morning Delight.
The photographer did a great job of capturing this butterfly in focus with its wings fully extended. I love the addition of the white flower. It wouldn't be the same photo without it. While the composition of the image is good, and you frequently hear me suggesting tighter crops in these critiques, I feel like a little more room in the frame around the butterfly would improve the image, especially on the sides. If this was a crop of a larger original, the photographer might try adding a little more space. I also increased the saturation, and I thought that improved an already nice image.
The photographer is Eleni Prusa. And this last image in the fauna category is Get Off My Lawn.
So this is almost, not almost, this one has the perfect aperture choice. There's all of the front elements of the bird and the praying mantis are in perfect focus with enough depth of field so that it doesn't start falling away until it needs to. So the photographer did a great choice here. I like the natural vignette of the soft background. It might have been nice to have the lower right element, maybe of the upper right element, a little bit darker. They compete a little bit, but this is an excellent photo.
And the photographer is Bob Free. We're leaving the fauna category and we are now in flora. This first image is prickly pear cactus fruit.
It's difficult to take an interesting photograph of a cactus. I've tried and failed many times, but I think the photographer has succeeded with this image. The position of the foreground fruit against the arch of background fruit is a very effective composition. I also like the rich purple color of the fruit against the saturated greens of the cactus pads and the background vegetation. The photographer did a pretty good job with depth of field, but it looks, to my eye, like some focal softness in the foreground fruits was overcompensated with sharpening, giving me the feeling of the foreground fruits being both a touch out of focus and over sharpened at the same time. Still, it's a satisfying image of a difficult subject.
And the photographer is Jeff Alstatter. This next image is Ancient Juniper.
I thought this was an excellent capture. The exposure was perfectly well done. It looks like the photographer did a little lower point of view, and that helped emphasize the height. I like the fact that we have this little stump on the right, and they gave it nice balance against the larger live juniper on the left. It has great depth from the foreground bottom of the small stump all the way back to the hills in the background. Very nicely done.
Photographer is Eric Engels. This next image is called Raindrops.
With this image, I struggled to find any aspects to hold my interest or any compositional elements to hold my eye. It seems stuck between abstraction and representation. It's in full sunlight, making for an unpleasing high contrast. I searched for suggestions for improvement, and all I could imagine was a much closer macro composition of groups of raindrops. I apologize for not opening my mind enough to see what else might be going on in this image, but I appreciate the photographer sharing it with us.
The photographer is June Anderson. This last image in the flora category is Datura unfolding.
I very much enjoyed the soft lighting in this photo. The lighting complements the soft shape of the plant itself. The minimum depth of field works well with the subject, and the falling off the light and with the background and everything gives it a nice painterly effect.
The photographer is Brad Oliver. And now we are entering the natural landscape category with Sunset at Chickenfoot Lake.
This is a magnificent mountain lake image and a classic high Sierra photograph. The composition is superb. Note the pleasing diagonal of the clouds in the lower left, transitioning through the middle to the mountain slope in the upper right. I love the overlay of the submerged rocks in the center of the frame under the reflected clouds. And that glow, that fantastic orange glow that the photographer has captured in the sky. I think this wonderful image could be made even better if the upper left and center left of the image was significantly darkened. I found my eye being drawn to the bright areas there. Sweet photo.
And the photographer is John Sievert. This next image, Pfeiffer Beach, Big Sur.
Well, this is a great capture of the hole at the beach at Pfeiffer Beach, for those of you who've been there. I like how the photographer had the brighter exposure in the hole, drawing your eye and the attention to the hole at this very spot. And I thought the exposure of the rocks and the focus on the rocks on this side worked very well to give it give you very much a sense of being able to touch the rocks and the textures. And yet at the same time, the shutter speed was slow enough to give a little bit of the motion to the water. I think the balance of all those elements makes it work very well.
The photographer is Dave McClellan. This next image is Half Dome Reflections.
Another classic High Sierra image. Hooray! I have my own photo from this very spot hanging above my monitor as I type. The composition is well chosen with the curve of the river leading us to the monolith of El Capitan framed by evergreens. I debated whether the branches extending into the sky were enhancing or blocking the sky, and I decided that I liked them. This image is overall way too bright, and it's going to look especially bright on the screen here in the room. Perhaps the photographer's monitor is not calibrated, but darkening this image makes it much, much better. El Capitan goes from being too bright to having a nice glow. I also found that increasing the contrast a little improved the image to my eye. A good image of a great scene.
The photographer is Janice Rossner. This next image, Mono Lake Sunset.
This is a beautiful capture of sunset light. I like the framing. I like the fact that the photographer avoided splitting the horizon in the exact middle and having it down a little bit. I was thinking in my monitor, although this looks a little different here, of adding just a touch more light on the left tufa, much like on the right. And it seemed to bring out, I like the treatment of the right tufa and how that foreground tufa kind of stood out. And I thought maybe if we added a little bit light to the left side and maybe even to the middle ground tufas, it might have made this excellent photograph maybe work even better.
The photographer is Mike Shea. This next image, Waikiki Sunset.
It's the composition that makes this image work. The arrangement of sailboat, setting sun, curling wave, and paddleboarder is a wonderful combination of serendipity and skill by the photographer. I love the orange glow in the sky and the horizontal lines of waves and clouds and horizon making nice layers in the frame. There's obvious graininess in the clouds and the wave shadows that detract from this image, but could easily be improved with noise reduction tools on any platform, but Topaz Labs are especially good at improving images like this. I am not a Topaz spokesman. Well done.
And the photographer is Gary Emanuel. This next image, Stormy Sunset at Chickenfoot Lake.
I'm going to have to tell you, I mean, I've loved all of these photos, and they're all so good. So it's hard to find anything wrong with any of them. This sunset at Chickenfoot Lake is an excellent photo with great depth. I love the the foreground of the white rocks, the middle ground with the reflection of the sky in the distant background, and the fact that, you know, we talk about this a lot, but, you know, here the photographer has chosen to include a person in the image, which gives it this really great sense of scale. But not only in this case is a great sense of scale, it gives a lot of story to the image of photographer capturing this great light. I think it was brilliantly done.
And not only that, but it's a story that after John Sievert's photo, that's a picture of John Sievert, and this was taken by George Popel. All right, this next image is titled Granite Plateau After Sunset.
This image makes my heart ache to be in the high Sierra at sunset, or I guess it could be dawn as well. I love the pairing of the glowing boulder and the juniper tree with its twisting trunk as the main elements against the perfect clouds of the sky. All of the foreground is sharp, and there is a hint of cloud blurring that gives a little bit of motion to the sky. That bright spot in the clouds on the center right almost looks like a full moon trying to burn through. I tried cropping some off the left and off the right of this image to make more of a square composition, and found that a very nice diagonal of granite and juniper and blue sky snaps into place in a way that doesn't in this rectangular composition. I suggest the photographer give it a try to maybe improve an already gratifying image.
The photographer is Eric Ingalls, and now we are entering the night photography category, and I'm sure that this was supposed to be named, so I'm just going to call it unnamed.
So this capture of a wheel looks like it was from the county fair the other week. And I think that the frame rate or the shutter speed worked nicely to capture this color of the wheel. And yet at the same time, the people in here are relatively still. I like the inclusion of the back of this person's head looking at the wheel. If it was just the wheel, it's just a colorful wheel. But I think, again, having this human element of somebody looking up at it and the other people in the corner made it work all the better.
And this image is by Fred Crowder. And Fred, what is your name for it? Will, okay. All right. This next image is Milky Way over Sabrina Lake.
Note how the photographer chose the point of rocks in the foreground to align with the vertical spill of our galaxy above. I think back to the old days of film when an image like this was so impossible that it wasn't even in my consciousness when I was backpacking in the High Sierra in the 90s. The brightness of the stars and galaxy is well balanced against the foreground brightness, with the mountain rim left dark to form a sharp contrast with the sky. I tried increasing the saturation of this image a little bit, and to my eye, it made an already great image even better.
And the photographer is John Sievert. This next category is people, and the first image is at the circus.
I love the lighting effect of this image and the high key treatment of the lights on the two performers. It gave it a nice fantasy-like effect. The poses are interesting in their position, and yet there's enough shadow on light on their legs and their arms and their muscles to give definition to their bodies. I think that this is wonderfully a wonderful fantasy photo.
And the photographer is Jonathan Beth. This next image is untitled.
I loved what's going on with the girls on the fence in this image. Their different expressions, poses, and directions of gazing are the most interesting elements in this photograph. I also like the choice of black and white, which simplifies the image to being just about the people and not the color of their clothes or the sky. To my eye, the man on the far right is not very interesting, and his expression is flat. So I tried cropping the right, the bottom, and the top off this image to a frame that was just about the girls, the woman in the background, and the grandmother, and I thought it made for a much more effective image. If this photo is about including everyone in the family, then this isn't the right choice. But if it's about art, then I suggest the cropping. Thanks for sharing.
And the photographer is Grace Farrig. This next image is titled Taj Mahal.
This photo has a lot of feeling to it. The closed eyes, the facial, the postures, the sweat on his head adds to the feeling of you being there. There's even, I think, there's even some expectorant from him singing in the photo. It's a very nice intimate look at the performer. I'm not sure that the whatever that item is on the upper right, it just a little distracting. I would like to have seen that, removed or darkened, especially that white spot. But it's great, it has a lot of feeling to it.
And the photographer is Bob Free. This next image is Tessa.
This is a well-composed and well-photographed image of the woman. I like the offset composition, and the pose, lighting, and focus of the woman are well done. The photographer knows something about portrait photography. Unfortunately, I think the obviously replaced background makes the photo look what I'd call fakey rather than enhancing the image, with the sawtooth transition between her hair and the replaced background being particularly unattractive. Club Rules also suggests that this photo belongs in the realistic manipulated or the creative category. It's a great photo of the subject, but I find myself disappointed in the final composite.
And the photographer is Fred Claussens. This next image, Happy Grandpa.
Well, the eyes tell it all, but also the inclusion of the hands and the holding, the grandpa's holding posture, the child's pointing, they all contribute to a sense of love and excitement in a 2D medium, which is hard to convey. There's a nice vignette around it, but I thought maybe it would be been nicer if they could have used a little bit more graduated and softer vignette. Now in this one, it shows differently than in my screen, so I don't notice it as much, but I still think a little broader vignette and softer might have been nice. But this is a great photo, the eyes and the excitement of the child's face and the grandfather. Wonderful.
And the photographer is Dave McClellan. This next image, Amazon Village Girl and Brother.
This is a well-composed image, framed so that it is focused on the children against the green background with their heads in the upper part of the image. Their expressions are interesting, and the timing to catch the boy with his hand in his mouth was a good choice by the photographer. To my eye, there are several significant faults in this image, however. It has a very strong green color cast that makes their faces look sickly, but can be vastly improved by moving the tint slider in Lightroom toward magenta. The image is also oversaturated to the point of not being pleasing, at least on my monitor. With these suggestions, I think the image goes from pretty good to very nice.
The photographer is Ed Sylvester. This next image is Shooting Down Teenage Dreams.
So one of the things that I really like in this one is the choice of it as a black and white. It really helps to emphasize this is a moment of confrontation, and for some reason having it in black and white rather than color helps to emphasize that. I love the eye line between, I think, the mother and the daughter. The finger pointing. I compliment the photographer on being ready to capture this tense moment.
And the photographer is Chris Schiller. This next image, Lee Fields.
I've photographed performers before, and microphones can be particularly challenging to deal with. While they are, of course, necessary for hearing the performer, they seem to always be blocking the face of the performer, becoming a bane for a photographer. Fortunately, in this image, the microphone is as unobtrusive as it can be. The composition of this image is excellent, and I love the gold shine of the suit against the deep purple of the background. The timing of the photo was skillful, catching the performer at a moment that makes a viewer wonder if he is a singer or a preacher. Well done.
And the photographer is Mike Shea. This next image is Natalia, AKA Disney Princess Belle.
Well, it was an excellent capture with a good catch light in the eyes, nice pose, and again, I would compliment the photographer on capturing the right moment. I think my only thought on this one is it looks like this is a flash photo with a flash mounted on the camera, and if it were possible, it'd be nice to be able to do this with a little bit with off-camera flash rather than on-camera flash. The on-camera flash took this very nice pose and image, and it's a bit flat. There are no shadows anywhere because of the light source being right there above the lens. I apologize if that's not the case, but that's what it looked like. And you might experiment sometimes with and learn about using off-camera flash that would have really brought out some of the shadows in the face and got a little nicer definition and a little bit softer light too. But
And
anyway,
more?
no.
Okay. The photographer is Rachel Rosenthal. This next image, Artemis Arthur.
There's that darn microphone partially blocking the performer's face again. But in this case, the arm, hand, cheekbone, and earring of the performer makes a pleasing diagonal, with a bow tie and her eyes forming an opposing diagonal. I love the choice of black and white, which brings out subtle textures in the shirt and face that might not have been as pleasing in a color image. The expression of the performer is interesting, and all the important elements in the photo are in focus, while having a shallow enough depth of field to separate the performer effectively from potentially distracting elements in the background. Thanks for sharing, Chris.
I was gonna say, and the maker is Chris Schiller. We try not to have our critiquers critique their own, but I think that's the way it worked tonight.
He gave me a lot of money for that one.
Oh, good. This next one is Belly Dancers.
I think that the use of the slower shutter speed obviously, made this really work. Having the motion and the swirls with the belly dancer. I like that, and the exposure being a little bit overly exposed. I think all work to the effect of this. I think my only thought was, I wonder what would have happened if you could have experimented a little bit with a little slightly faster shutter speed, maybe to freeze the face, which doesn't move as much as the bottom part of the dress or the belly dancer's outfit. It'd be fun to play around with this, but I like the effect of this and how it came out.
The photographer is Gary Kartstaffner. And now we are in the photojournalism category. This first one is fly fishing in the High Sierra.
I continue to appreciate the High Sierra images tonight. The photographer timed this photo very well to catch the sinuous fluorescent fishing line in mid-cast. The composition is good, and there is a nice range of tones from dark shadows to bright clouds. I like the inclusion of the Sawtooth Ridge and a bit of sky to give context to the scene. There's some lens flare on the right side of the image that decreases contrast. I tried cropping 25% off the right side of the image and found that it eliminated the problem, although now looking up at it up on the screen, it might actually enhance the image. So I could take that back and could go either way. With either composition, I found that adding some vignetting helped improve the framing of the image. Very nice.
And the maker is the man sitting right next to you, George Pelpel. This next image, Water Stop.
Well, it's a good story of this thirsty dog. The action was stopped well. Shutter speed was appropriate. I think the only suggestion to make this story a little stronger is that the exposure in the woman's top is blown out. And the challenge here is the dog is black for the most part. And to try to get the exposure of the dog correct, by exposing it enough to bring out, making the dog not all black, you blow out the woman's dress. But with the modern cameras today, I think you could actually underexpose the dog a bit and then be able to control enough of the white on the woman's top, and then in post-production balance off the two. That was my only thought on it. And then the only other thing is the car and the front fender or whatever the car, it'd be nice if that wasn't there, maybe just a little movement, one way or the other to try to eliminate that. But I think those are the only things in there that could really make this sing well.
And the maker is Bernadette Sylvester. We are now entering the travel category. And the first image is Amsterdam.
I'm guessing the photographer chose the location, composition, and post-processing of this image with the Dutch master painters in mind. The softness of the image gives the feeling of an impressionist painting, which is pleasing. I can't help but feel that there is a missing element in the photo. It feels just a little empty to me, without an extra something like a person riding a bike across a bridge or perhaps a boat in the distance on the canal. In any case, it's well composed and skillfully photographed, and the painterly feeling is enough to make it a satisfying photograph.
The maker is Gary Kartstaffner. This next image, Dunrobin Castle, Scotland.
This is an excellent capture of the castle. I like the use of the flowers in the foreground and that element to give it the additional depth. If it wasn't there, it would be, only kind of a middle ground. I kind of wish that the flowers covered a little bit more, but I understand that there's also this little doorway at the bottom, which may be, another element that they might have wanted to capture. The exposure is well done. The focus is well done. Nice job.
Thank you. Maker is Kathy Triolo. Next image, Monk in Training.
This is a well-executed photo of an exotic location. The boy's face is in good focus, and shadows below his forehead have been brought out in post-processing so that we get a good view of his eyes and face. The composition feels to me to be a little too centered, and it looks like the boy was photographed from below, which makes his head look small in comparison to his lower body. But that could just be the billowing of his robes. To me, the upper 25% and lower 25% of this photo aren't adding much to it, so I tried cropping the photo down to a square composition and found the resulting framing to be much better. The boy's hands then form a diagonal with his face, and the distractions are minimized. Thanks for sharing.
And the maker is Brian Dunbar. This next image is titled Laundry Day.
Doesn't look like my laundry. I think this was a humorous effect on travel and the things that we encounter a lot on travel. I like the humor. I think the only thing I might have done is try to move the camera angle such that the panties are lined up against, say, the thatched leaves, and instead of against the dark bush up there or the dark green bush on the bottom, but especially the one on the left side. The light at the very top, it'd be nice if that was toned down a bit. I don't think it kind of draws your attention to the upper right-hand corner of the image, but nice humorous photo.
And the maker is Patricia Levitin. We now are in the Creative Fantasy Anything Goes category, and this is titled Dusk in Amsterdam.
Similar to the previous Amsterdam image, this photo seems to be aiming for a painterly feel, and I think the photographer succeeded. The swirly clouds and peaceful tree-lined canal make for an enjoyable composition. The sunburst from the edge of the frame is a nice touch. It looks like the photographer might have exposed for the bright sun and ended up with the rest of the frame being very dark. The photographer then perhaps tried to pull detail out of the shadows and ended up with heavy noise and sensor grid lines. Or I suppose there might have been a filter applied that was meant to emulate canvas and grain, but either way, to my eye, the result is distracting. Noise reduction software might help, but those grid lines would be challenging to mitigate. Still, when I roll my chair back from my monitor so that the grain and grids are less obvious, I like the result.
And the maker is Kathy Triolo. This next image is the model.
I think this was a very creative effect of these strokes or pencil marks on this reclining woman. I think it was especially well done because even though there's busyness of all these strokes, the face and the eyes of the model are left such that because of the contrast or whatever around her face, your eye is drawn to her face. And I think having that light background above her reclining body only helps to move your eye in that upward direction and away from the busyness of the pencil marks or strokes. So it works well in this case.
And the maker is Jonathan Beth. This next category is manipulated but realistic. And our first image is COVID-19.
Without any help from the image title, we're not sure of the context of this photograph, but I kind of like it that way. We are free to imagine many possible stories, and the story we imagine for this image probably says something about ourselves and our worldview. Is it rules followers surrounded by rules breakers? Or maybe it's free kids surrounded by oppressed kids. This photo works because of that ambiguity. I can't detect why it's in the manipulated but realistic category. Maybe it was supposed to be in the black and white category. Either way, it's a great photo.
And the maker is Robert Arnold. This next image, Montana Horse Country.
So I'm trying to understand the manipulated but realistic, and I'm assuming somewhat that the horses are not in the original shot. The shadows don't look quite right, but they do. The overall effect of the image is very nice, though, with the horses in the foreground. Otherwise, you'd have this empty field of green in front of you. So I think this works well. In my monitor, the green of the hill in the background was almost fluorescent, but it looks okay here. I think it is fairly realistic, but I guess it was manipulated. I like that. I like the effect of the horses.
And you'll have to ask Ingrid what she did. This is by Ingrid Lockhart. This next image, Ginny's tea litter.
Oh, look at the puppies. Or is it one puppy replicated 11 times since it's in this category? I think of the time and patience to orchestrate and or post-process this image, and I compliment the photographer on their persistence. It's a fun image that captures a moment in the life of some very good boys.
And the maker is Rachel Rosenthal. And I think she added the scarves, didn't you, Rachel? No? Oh my gosh. Well, then I was wrong about that. You'll have to ask her what she did. This next image, category, black and white. And this first image is Nepal Terrace in the Mist.
I really enjoyed this image. I like the softness of the lighting and the great depth of it going all the way back, and the use of these gray these gradations of gray, how they come down to a point in this lower right diagonal. Nothing is in great focus, but it adds to the mood overall of the image. It has somewhat of this nice vignette because of the light in the valleys where the mountains go down to. A very successful shot in my mind.
And the photographer is Brian Dunbar. This next image is titled Images of the City.
This well-composed, well-executed photo is another that is telling a story. I like the lines of perspective and the balanced elements in this shot. The mystery in it for me is the missing photo from the set and the story behind it, and that might have been a missed opportunity for titling this image. I tried adding a little vignetting, and I thought it improved the framing of the image a little. Very nice.
The photographer is Mike Weitzman. This next image is Reaching New Heights.
I always like strong black and white imagery and the contrast. I think that was it works well to juxtaposition of the trees and the mountains. I had a little bit of problem. I think that this image was a fairly low resolution image, and I found it kind of fell apart a little bit when I tried to magnify it, and maybe it just would be nice to have a little more resolution. I don't know. I like at the same time the very dark nature between the darkness and between the trees. At the same time, I wanted a little bit more development of those black areas. They were just, all void of anything. Maybe that might, for me, it might have worked a little better, but it's strong image nevertheless.
And the maker is Tom Quinn. The last image in the black and white category is called Black Ice.
I love the curve of white ice in this photo, almost like a river curling around the stone. This image has a fine range of tones from bright white to full black, and there are interesting elements and inclusions that keep my eyes moving around and interested. The photographer has used vignetting effectively to enhance the framing of the image. My interest falls off a little bit along the left side and top of the image, and I tried cropping a little off each and found a little improvement in doing so. Nice little image.
The maker is Ellen Davis, and that ends the black and white category. We are now in color. There is one image in the color category. So come on, people, enter. And this is Cow Coming Home.
It's a wonderful image. I don't know why I like it so much, but it has a certain whimsical nature of it, just because of the single cow walking along the road. I'm not sure what the black shadowing in the lower part of the image is, and I think it might have been nicer if it wasn't there. It's a nice, enjoyable shot. But I can't explain why. Sorry.
That's okay. You can apologize to Patricia Levitin, who is the maker. And our last category is the phone category, and this first image is titled Rainbow in My Backyard.
This is a great capture of almost the full arc of a rainbow. There's even a bit of a second rainbow seen in the upper left of the image. The colors were captured well, and I like the glow of the sky below the rainbow behind the trees. The image feels a little dark to me, at least on my monitor. Sitting here in the room, it looks pretty good, but this is the monitor makes it a little bright here. But I found that by increasing the brightness and the contrast a little bit, that the image was more appealing to me. Thanks for sharing.
And the maker is Eleni Prusa. This last image in the phone category is Meteora, Greece.
I think the fact that this is in the phone category is kind of amazing to me. Usually phone shots, it's hard to get a sense of shallow depth of field, and just because of the nature of this subject and the distance of the buildings from the rocks and the background, I think it works. It works well. I was surprised that this was a phone shot. An example of a good place to use your phone.
And that ends tonight's show. I want to thank all the photographers who submitted. What? Oh, I'm sorry. You want to know who it is? Oh, it's Bernadette Sylvester. Thank you, Bernadette. Anyway, thank you to everybody, and thanks to all of you who stayed. Thanks to Chris and David. All right. And it's only before 9 o'clock.
All right. Thank you, Kathy, Chris, and David. And that ends our program tonight. Next meeting is September 26th. You can vote on these images until the Friday before, September 23rd. That's it. Have a good night, folks.